Grenell is joining us now, and Rick is he was in Nevada, now Arizona. Big races there, of course. So Masters, and of course, Kerry Lake, who's become a star. We want to see those victories out there, and Abe Hamada as well, Hamadeh as for AG. Rick, being on the ground now, that's what we're trying to tell people. We've heard some goofy stuff out of Maricopa County, but is turnout big? Is turnout the way we want to see it?
Well, I think what we can say is that early voting numbers, both in Arizona and Nevada, have given Republicans a lot of encouragement. We are doing way better than we have done in the past in terms of mail-in ballots and early voting. And what that indicates is that the Democrats are just not that excited, and Republicans are motivated. We are also seeing long lines in Arizona for voting already. And as you alluded to, here we go again with machines and tabulators that are not working. And it just is really frustrating because we have an election system that is totally at the local level. And what that means is that you should be able to conduct an election at the local level, hire as many people as you have to make sure that we don't have long lines. Maybe you need, more people working, but you also need more people counting. We cannot have a situation where we are messaging, and shame on the media for jumping on this message to say, oh, it's going to take days and days and days. I'm telling you, you can put elementary school kids in a room and they can count faster than some of these people that are claiming that they need days to count. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, the fact is, though, with all of that, Rick is saying this too, vote. If you've not yet voted, we encourage you to go out and vote. Now, I think it's ridiculous too, Rick, that that already they're announcing in Arizona, oh, we probably won't know anything till Friday. And I'm thinking, this is where of course, the networks love it because it's better for ratings to drag this out. Huh?
Makes a lot of unrest in the country.
It does create unrest because people want certainty. I remember the days when we voted, and that night we had the answer. Yeah. And if it was close and there was a runoff, you knew there was a runoff. Yeah. How are you feeling overall, though, Rick? You've been around the country. I mean, I sense that there is, like you said, enthusiasm for the Republicans and not so enthusiastic on the Democratic side. But this is where every vote counts because these races are razor thin.
They're razor thin, and we must have people not only vote, but stay in line to vote. Don't get frustrated. Bring water, maybe even bring a folding chair. But the reality is you have to stay in line. If you're going to wait to vote on Election Day, then you have to stay in line, no excuses. I see this energy across the country, even though we're being outspent. Let's be very clear. The Democrats are way outspending the Republicans. They've got all of the corporation money. They've got university professors. They're controlling the whole system, banks and everything. But it's going to take a whole bunch of money to convince people that gas prices are low.
Well, I mean, you had, Rick, I'm going to play this one. I want to get your reaction to it. So Congressman Maloney out of New York, who now is, by the way, heads the DCCC, which is the Democratic Congressional Committee's campaign arm for the entire country for congressional Democrats. But now he's in a race to try and save his seat.
Right.
This was his closing message to his voters in his district. And, I mean, this is like the Democrat message to the American people when it comes to inflation and the higher cost of goods. Bite two.
Hudson Valley residents are feeling pain at the pump and at grocery stores. What have you done and what do you plan to do to help solve our inflation problem?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a family where, if the gas price went up, the food budget went down. So by this time of the week, we'd be eating Chef Boyardee if that budget wasn't going to change, right? So that's what families have to do.
So, I mean, Rick, this idea that no plan for inflation, no plan for recession, we've heard that from Karine Jean-Pierre, and just go get your Chef Boyardee, which, again, nothing against Chef Boyardee and families who rely on that to feed their families and keep them full.
All over again.
But, yeah, this is the United States of America, and this is the Democrats' head of the DCCC's closing message to voters. Just go buy the cheapest stuff you can find to feed your family.
Well, look, this is the same message that Democrats are doing as they shrink production of oil, as they shrink the supply of water, right, and electricity. In California, we're not talking about expanding production. We're talking about telling people to conserve. So conserve water, conserve energy, conserve electricity, and now it's, all across the country of just shrink your grocery bill by buying the cheaper stuff and go with a less quality food, and that's their solution. And this is not something that I think the American people are going to accept. We are the greatest country in the history of the world. We should not have politicians telling us to unplug your appliances from the kitchen after 5 o'clock and eat Chef Boyardee.
Can I say something else? I'm looking at Fox News right now, and on the Chiron it says problems reported at 20% of Maricopa County's Arizona's election sites. Okay, I just say this. First of all, that's no excuse not to vote. But can I tell you something? And somebody that's litigating these issues,
they knew they were going to be a huge battleground state.
Can we not, Rick? You are the director of national intelligence. Can we not figure out how to tabulate votes in the year 2022?
It's really outrageous that this is happening, but listen, we've said this before. The reason this is happening, the reason the Democrats get to be completely incompetent is because the media are not pushing back with them. Heidi Presbala, who was an NBC far-left reporter and now is at Politico, really wrote a piece this morning mocking all of the Republicans that might possibly be in charge of elections. Rather than talk about the politicians that might take over the elections, she should be writing about the current politicians, Democrats who are in charge of elections, who are a disaster.
Rick, ultimately, we've got, a lot of people who are sitting back. They want to know, where should they be watching tonight? From your perspective, and again, this changes if you're East Coast versus West Coast and what time zone you're on, how possibly late you can stay up. But what races are you watching most closely? If you're talking to folks out there, and again, it might be elections in their state, but also, I think it's important too that we might get some of these House seats back much earlier. We might know more about the House than we do the Senate earlier in the evening. But where are you looking? I know you're out in Arizona and, of course, Nevada, and those two are really important to Republicans across the country. Anywhere else that you're watching closely?
Yeah, so what I'm going to be doing tonight is I'm going to be watching the Ted Budd race very closely, because he's going to win, and I want to see how fast he wins. Because if Ted Budd wins fast, and then you immediately see Dr. Oz go up and win, I think you're going to see at that point Lee Zeldin and Tudor Dixon make it a really good hot race. They could possibly win, and I'm going to watch that red wave come all the way over and sweep through all of the seats in Arizona and all of the seats in Nevada.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because the fact that we could retire Gretchen Whitmer tonight, along with Nancy Pelosi, along with the Democrat one-party control in New York, I mean, that's huge, a huge potential.
Well, the Lee Zeldin, the fact that that's
outside of just a federal
rank,
issue at the state level, too, in Oregon as well.
Look, I mean, the fact that Lee Zeldin is in a competitive race for governor. He's a great candidate. He's a good friend of ours. I know a good friend of yours, Rick. He did a tremendous job in Congress, and he would be a fantastic governor. But the fact that it's that close, Rick, tells me that we've got a lot to be hopeful for tonight.
Absolutely, and I think you got to put Bolduc in there, the New Hampshire Senate race. That could really go. Again, I'm going to be watching Ted Budd's race quickly because I know he's going to win, and I want to see how fast. If he wins very fast, that means that red wave is really powerful.
All right, Rick, as always, we appreciate it. We know you're campaigning hard out in Nevada, now Arizona, and best of luck to all of those candidates. And just encourage people to get out the vote. It looks like Arizona is going to be you're there. Looks like it's going to be a hotbed of these voter issues.
Just get out and vote, even if you're there and you haven't
absolutely.
voted. Please go vote.
Get out
They'll
your
figure
vote,
this
and
out.
then people like Rick and us, we will fight the battles we got to fight.
Right.
But let's. I mean, they're going through it right now on TV. I mean, it's a whole thing.
I mean, here we go.
But Rick, as always, we appreciate it. We know if you follow Rick on Twitter too, you can stay updated on a lot of those races out west because he's out west. A lot of us are East Coast heavy, so follow Rick on Twitter. Stay up to speed there. Make sure to get out the vote. As always, we appreciate having you, Rick.